In this clip we're going to look at questions on metric and imperial units. So a little sort of ramble first of all about the differences between the two. Metric units are now by far the most commonly used units around the world. They were developed in the 18th century in Europe, and they tie in nicely with the decimal system where everything counts in units of tens, hundreds, thousands and so on. So it's quite an intuitive system to use. The three main units for decimal measurement are length, meters, mass, kilograms, and volumes. Volume is in cubic meters, or in capacity, which would be liters. There are a number of equivalences that you need to know changing one metric unit to another. So for example, in length you need to know and be able to deal with the fact that there are 10 millimeters in a centimeter, 100 centimeters in a meter, and 1,000 meters in a kilometer. For mass, the most common ones you would need to be familiar with are that there's 1,000 grams in a kilogram and 1,000 kilograms in a ton. And for volume, a relationship that is really important that you know is the relationship between volume and capacity, where volume of 1,000 cubic centimeters is equivalent to 1 litre, and that is tested a lot. When we talk about imperial units, we used imperial units in the UK pretty much until the early 1970s when we joined the European community, but they're still used extensively in the USA. And I guess our country is still a little bit muddled between the two. We still use miles per hour for speed. We still buy a quarter pounder with cheese if we go to McDonald's. And lots of us measure our height in feet and inches. I'm 5'9", etc. Or measure our weight in stones. So we're in a bit of a mix. In America, it's predominantly imperial units that are still used. And the issue with them really is that it's less intuitive to remember the equivalences between them. So for example, if you're measuring length in inches, feet and yards, the relationships are 12 inches is a foot, 3 feet is a yard. Mass in pounds, which is LB, ounces, OZ and stones, there's 16 ounces in a pound, 14 pounds in a stone. So they're not as easy to deal with as jumps of tens, hundreds and thousands. And volume in fluid ounces, pints and gallons. So 20 fluid ounces is a pint, 8 pints is a gallon. You're less likely to be asked a question where you're converting one imperial unit to another, whereas converting one metric unit to another is quite common. And you're also required to be able to convert between some metric and imperial units. Now if they're obscure ones, they'll give you what that equivalence is. So for example here, 1 acre is 0.4047 of a hectare, you'd be given that. But there are three that it states quite clearly in the exam specification that you're expected to know. So you're expected to be able to recall that 8 kilometers is approximately 5 miles, that 1 kilogram is approximately 2.2 pounds, and that 1 litre is approximately 1.75 pints. You need to commit those to memory. So let's take a look at some questions. So Aled weighs 12 stone 8 pounds. Thomas weighs 85 kilograms. Which of the two is the heavier, and by how much? And in this one it is actually telling you what that equivalence is, but you can't rely on that. So we know that 1 stone is 14 pounds, and I know that 1 kilogram is approximately 2.2 pounds. So the first thing I'm going to do is to change Aled's weight completely into pounds. So Aled, 12 stone, to change that into pounds, every stone has got 14 pounds in, so we do 12 lots of 14, 168 pounds plus that extra 8, so Alid weighs 176 pounds. Now Thomas weighs 85 kilos, and every kilo is equivalent to roughly 2.2 pounds. So by multiplying that by 2.2, I can turn that into pounds as well. And that will allow me then to make the direct comparison between the two. So Alid weighs 176 pounds, Thomas weighs 187 pounds. So the question is, who is the heavier? So Thomas is heavier, and by how much? So the difference between the two. So we do 187, take away 176, so by 11 pounds. Question 2. Sian is driving along a road in Germany which has a speed limit of 80 kilometers per hour. She's driving at 55 miles per hour. How much is her speed above or below the speed limit? So I'm looking for the relationship between miles and kilometers. So the relationship between miles and kilometers is 5 miles is roughly 8 kilometers, and the squiggly equal sign means approximately 2, but you treat it in the same way. So 55, to turn that into kilometers per hour, I've got to multiply that by something, and then whatever that scale factor, multiplication factor, whatever you want to call it, is, I would have to multiply this side by the same. So in order to work out what I'm multiplying by, it's fairly easy and obvious in this one, because you can do it in your head, but just to show you how you would do it, if it wasn't so obvious, what you'd be doing to work out what that's multiplied by is doing 55 divided by 5. So to change from miles to kilometers, I'd have to multiply by 11. So that will give us 88 kilometers per hour. So the speed limit is 80, she's doing 88, so she is 8 kilometers per hour over or above speed limit. So that's a commonly used method for scaling up, for changing one unit to the other. Work out what the multiplication factor is for one pair and then use it on the other pair. Number 3. There are 1,760 yards in a mile. How many yards are there in a kilometer? So again, I know that 5 miles is approximately 8 kilometers. So this time what I want to work out is how many miles there are in 1 kilometer. So in order to do that, to go from 8 to 1, I have to divide by 8. 8 divided by 8 is 1. So I need to do that divided by 8 as well. So if we do 5 divided by 8, I get 0.625 miles. So 1 kilometer is 0.625 miles. I've then got to work out how many yards that becomes. So 1 mile would be that. So I would now multiply by 1760 to work out how many yards there is. So 0.625 times 1760 1100 yards. Because 1 kilometer is less than a mile, then we would expect that value to be less than the number of yards in a mile. A cycle club organised a race that takes place over a fortnight. In the race, the competitors travelled a distance of 320 miles in England and 480 kilometres in France. In which country did the race cover the most distance? So you can see that the relationship between miles and kilometres is one that's tested more than others. So 5 miles is approximately 8 kilometres. So if I want to change miles into kilometres, in order to make that comparison with 480, so I've got to do something to go from 5 to 320. So 320 divided by 5 is 64. It's 64 times as big. So the kilometres is also going to be 64 times as big. So in England, they're actually travelling 512 kilometres, which is more than 480. So more covered in England. And how much more would be 512 less 480, 32 kilometers. So more covered in England by 32 kilometers. So write that there. 32 kilometers. And the final question: at the time when the pyramids were built, Egyptians used different measures from those we use today. It is believed that 1 pyramid inch was equivalent to 1.0010846752 inches, and 1 pyramid cubit was 25 pyramid inches. We also know that 1 inch is 2.54 centimeters. Complete the following table. 1 pyramid cubit is blank inches. So 1 pyramid cubit is 25 pyramid inches, and each pyramid inch is that many of our inches. So in order to work out 1 pyramid cubit in inches, I have to multiply 25 by the 1 pyramid inch equivalence. So I'm going to do 25 times 1.0010846752. So let's work out what that is. So 1.00108467. They want the answer to 3 decimal places. That's the first, that's the second, that's the third. The next one is less than 5, so it remains 027. And then for the second one, 1 pyramid inch is blank centimetres. So I've got to turn this now into centimetres, and I know every inch is 2.54, so I have to multiply that by the inch equivalence. So I have to do 2.54 times 1.00106752. So that's my number. This time I want 4 significant figures. 2 is the first, second, third, fourth. Now we look at the next digit. It's 5 or bigger, so that rounds up to 2.543. So that's a little set of questions there on equivalences, unit equivalences. The most important thing that you need to do is try and learn those equivalences. If you are limited, then certainly the one between miles and kilometres is the one that comes up most frequently, so really commit that one. And within metric, the equivalence between cubic centimetres and litres.